Okay, good. All right. Welcome to, as I said, the first workshop. This is Centralizing Functions for a Thriving Garden Network. I know some of you, well, maybe not, saw this presentation in New York, but this is really, this is a foundational idea, a foundational concept, a couple actually, of the Urban Garden Project around the 9 factors to thrive, as well as the idea of a strong central organization to support a thriving garden network. Well, maybe not. Saw this presentation in New York, but this is really this is a foundational idea, a foundational concept, a couple actually, of the Urban Garden Project around the 9 factors to thrive, as well as the idea of a strong central organization to support a thriving garden network. Oh my goodness. Hold on one second. Okay, guys, why? Oh, I see. Okay, hi. Um, I'm glad we're all friends here. Okay, so the agenda, what we're going to cover, I'm going to tell you a little bit just about the Urban Garden Project. I think most of you are familiar with it. Just quick who I am. As with everything with the Urban Garden Project, it includes introductions because the mission of the UGP is to unite, uplift, and amplify the movement. Uniting, the first step of uniting is getting to know each other and building community. So we're going to have quick introductions. I'm going to talk through these 9 factors to thrive. And really what distinguishes sort of these 9 factors, these 9 functions versus garden level functions, a couple case studies, and then open it up for discussion. Okay, so about the Urban Garden Project, again, I think most of you are fairly familiar with this. This began as a project of Denver Urban Gardens, and then at the beginning of this year, I stepped down from Denver Urban Gardens to launch this as its own nonprofit. Let's see. Okay, I was afraid of that. Launches as its own nonprofit. Let's see. Okay, I was afraid of that. The Urban Garden Project is a capacity building organization for the community garden movement, and with the mission to unite, uplift, and amplify. Okay, hold on one second. Now I can't see you all. Okay, definitely speak up because I've updated my settings here. And it's a membership organization, but membership is not required to participate. Really, just the goal here is to get all of the folks literally around the world coming together to share best practices and lift up the movement. A little bit about me. So I think I met a lot of you while I was at Doug. So before starting the Urban Garden Project, I spent 5 years as the executive director of Denver Urban Gardens. Doug is one of the larger independent nonprofit organizations doing this work with 200 community gardens and 30 food forests. Okay, I'll just keep going. Can you guys all still see the presentation and hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can see the presentation, hear you, and see you at the top.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so back on track. So I led Denver Urban Gardens, but before that, I'm an entrepreneur. So I have an MBA, and I started a number of businesses previously in my career. So the Urban Garden Project and what's happening now, starting a new business, is something that's very comfortable for me, and I really enjoy doing it. Also, I very much have historically played in the space of regenerative agriculture and impact through starting B Corps and mission-driven businesses. So I'm really, really excited to do this. And the unique nature of the Urban Garden Project as a movement is something that, just really excited to build this and build this with all of you. Okay, so quick introductions. If y'all want to share your name, organization, role, and then real quick, just, kind of the big challenge, and it can just be whatever is top of mind today that you're facing in your work. And since I can't see anybody, I'm going to ask CJ to kick it off. And then if you guys could popcorn through, please.
Sure. Hi, I'm CJ Sintel, the CEO of the Nashville Food Project. Um, the biggest challenge we're facing is getting our our network of gardens up and running in an efficient way. I think that's the biggest sort of global challenge. Our most specific challenge, of course, is water. And so we are continuing to work on water at all the sites. I'll hand it off to Allison.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Allison. Work with all of these fine folks at the National Food Project as the Senior Director of Community Engagement. Um, and I think I will just add a challenge is kind of managing transition. So we've had a lot of different ways that we've worked with different types of community members and spaces in our garden programs. And as we kind of transition to more of a network model, just kind of holding all those pieces is certainly something we're trying to navigate with care. Peter?
Thanks. I'm Peter Burns with the National Food Project. My title is Director of Agricultural Operations. I think I would kind of add to the theme here as one of the challenges that we are directly digging into with my team this week and upcoming is kind of the challenge of expanding the network while still managing and holding on to what I'll call legacy spaces, for lack of a better term. We're also calling them hub sites in like a hub and spoke model right now. So trying to really unpack the capacity we're investing in those sites with the challenge of expanding a network and how to balance those things and move forward with a plan and a vision and a strategy around it. Oh, and I'll pass it to Anna.
Hi there. My name is Anna Morabito. I'm also with the Nashville Food Project. My title is Community Agriculture Network Manager. And I'll echo Allison a bit on that challenge of managing transitions with care. And I will pass it off to Lulu for introductions.
Hi, I'm Lulu. I am the Community Agriculture Engagement Coordinator. I just started last week. No challenge yet. I'm still learning. Thank you so much. So I pass it to let me see. Okay. Yeah, Amanda.
Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Maselli. I'm the Community Agriculture and Sustainability Manager for the City of Alpharetta. And I would say our biggest challenge, my biggest challenge in my role is funding, convincing city leadership that we need more funding, particularly for labor. So it's a labor shortage, but the labor shortage is due to a funding shortage. And I will pass it to Brittany.
Hi everyone, Brittany Guerrero. I'm with the Community Gardens of Tucson in Tucson, Arizona. I'm the executive director. I would say the biggest challenge, well, all of y'all, they're all resonating, but I would say that our organization is or has been really working for several years on the nonprofit life cycle where we are in that, and we're transitioning from that working board to fully, directed organization, staffed organization. And we're in the kind of the last phase of that. And, with every growth period, there are challenges in funding those staff members and really transitioning roles and still engaging with our board. They're all still in the gardens and supporting us somewhat as a working board. And so that's really also amazing to have. So you don't really want to fully let that go if somebody's really passionate about that. So a little bit of transition in that capacity. Yeah. And I have not been paying attention to who's left. Would somebody mind raising their hand and saying I haven't gone yet? Leah, there we go. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Leah. I coordinate the Community Gardens program in Fort Collins, Colorado. We are part of the Botanic Garden, which is called the Gardens on Spring Creek, and also part of the city. And I would say a problem is just being a city program. It comes with a lot of limitations. of what we can do. And I have a really long wait list, but no resources to expand the program, to create more gardens. And that is something that the Parks Department has to decide. And so I think that communicating with the Parks Department, figuring out who's in charge of what, who pays for what, is actually a really confusing thing right now. The Parks Department doesn't want to pay for things, of course. We have a lot of budget cuts. And the community gardens program doesn't have its own like funding source, large funding source. I have funding for buying hoses and stuff, but yeah, so that's tricky. Oh, Sarah?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Sarah Lehner. I'm the grants manager for the Nashville Food Project. And I'm just going to kind of echo what my colleagues have said. I mean, the challenge from my perspective and the work I do is staying like rooted in reality while telling our story, our past, present, and future, and then making sure that story is in alignment with our garden team's capacity and vision, and of course, leadership's vision. So, and just rolling with these changes and making sure the story I'm telling is also, just reflective of reality. So, oh, I'm sorry. I don't know who else. Emily, have you gone? Or I'm not sure who else is left. Is that it?
Okay. All right. If that's it, shall we move on? Yeah, thank you everybody for sharing that. And I think hopefully what we're going to see in this is that the issues and the challenges you're facing are what everyone's facing, really just to different degrees. And, that's a really big thing that we're trying to address and build a supportive community around, is when you're dealing with funding issues or organizational structure or board integration, we don't need to be recreating the wheel every time, right? So everyone has their own unique set of circumstances, but can you lean on other organizations who have been through that, and other resources so that you can do it more efficiently, and focus on growing food and building communities. So I really appreciate you all sharing a challenge. I know we have many. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the meat of the session, which is this idea of 9 factors to thrive. So little history on the Urban Garden Project and these 9 factors specifically. So over the last 4 years, we have been holding forums, these calls that we've been doing every quarter. And it's really been open, kind of an open session. And, bring your issues, let's workshop it, let's really start to understand what's happening out there in the community. And through these calls, 9 themes emerged, these 9 factors to thrive. And when you all shared the issues, yes, exactly. That is what distilled down became the 9 factors to thrive. And these are mostly operational issues. I think we all know and trust and believe that the work we do is tremendous, is transformational, is wonderful, is good. Yet in order for that work to happen, there are these sort of back office operational issues that just, can really just hamstring our ability to realize the full potential. And then that last line, regardless of structure, city size, or budget, these issues seem to be somewhat universal. So whether you're a small, couple person volunteer organization or a large municipal operation, to some degree, these are the issues, these are the opportunities. So the 9 factors themselves are here. And again, these are very distilled. So I'm going to talk through in detail what these are, but this just gives you a sense. It goes from positioning to design to water and land, all the way to policy and awareness. So before I go into the detail, however, I want to sort of explain why the title of this presentation is Centralizing Functions. These factors are, they're things that actually require infrastructure. They can operate more easily at scale, but they can also operate most effectively when there is somebody or an organization focused on them. I tend to sort of break the world up in businesses and organizations into what I call the artists and the operators. The artists, as I see it, are the folks who are in the field, who are growing food, building community, gardeners, doing the beautiful work. Artists and operators, sometimes there's a sort of skill crossover, but not necessarily. And so when you bring these operational functions, when you centralize them with a group of people or an individual or an organization, that way the folks who are focused and their brains work to focus on, as I say, boring back office things, then it frees the folks out in the field to do their beautiful work. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a large organization with a large HQ. This could also happen on a garden level where you're centralizing operational functions with a person or a couple people. But it's just, this is the theory. And where this really applies is networks, right? So we have Nashville and we have Tucson, and I've talked to folks in Austin and Charlotte. The idea is that within a community, is there a more efficient way to sort of centralize these back office functions while the folks in the field are doing their thing? Okay, so digging into this, the functions, the factors. The first one, and this is something that I really, really feel very strongly about, and I know within the UGP board, we've had a lot of conversations, is around positioning. And honestly, I think so much of community gardens' success really can hinge on this positioning idea. And it's ensuring that how you position your work, how you speak about it in the world is relevant and relevant to the people you're talking to. It's certainly relevant to us, right? We know this is great and wonderful and saving the world, but we have to make it relevant and resonate with the people that we're talking to, and compelling enough for people to act and for people to want to engage and step up. It matters because the community garden work is actually can change the world. I mean, cultivating food, community, climate resilience, it's so efficient. It really addresses so many of the issues that are facing our society right now. And it tends to, I think historically and in the last sort of 20 years, it's been focused on food. Food is super important, but it is so much more. Community gardens, I think don't think that we can necessarily solve the hunger crisis and the food issues with community gardens. It is a piece of the solution, but where it really brings value is these other levers that it pulls around community and climate. So strong positioning, it helps you broaden folks who are engaged. It helps you broaden, with funders and supporters and folks out in the community. What great looks like is confident, right? In the nonprofit space, often we, speak sort of quietly about the work. But we should be showing up confidently, standing tall and proud, because we are doing such transformational, glorious work. And then on the scale and scope, expanded. What we used at Doug is food, community, and climate. And that's, something that really does feel that it's been very inspirational. It's allowed us to expand into greater funding. It gets more people engaged who might not necessarily just be focused on food. And so there's just a real opportunity here. So what to start doing now around positioning is, this is kind of a brain exercise, like can we think bigger and more expansively about the impact that we have? Try the food, community, climate framework and see if that works, and talk to some funders and talk to some community members and see how that feels. And really, net is when people understand the impact and the transformational power of this work, the support gets bigger, all the way from the neighborhood level to the funder level, and then the civic leaders as well. Any questions on this one? And the first couple are sort of heady, so I'll probably do more talking on these. The next is around design, and this is organizational design. Really, the opportunity is to create centralized, professional, and equitable organizational design. And Brittany, your conversation and your issue around the board. Nashville, your conversation around, geez, how do we structure this organization so we can retain the legacy, gorgeous work that we've been doing and expand the benefit. So this is something that is also, it's complicated. It's not super straightforward, but it really is, can be a game changer. Well-structured organizations really put the roles in the right places, again going back to this artisan operator framework, and just help an organization become more efficient, preventing burnout, and be able to evolve and be responsive, as change inevitably happens. So what great looks like, stakeholders operate in their zone of genius. And just a little bit of an aside, a book that I recommend to folks who are kind of doing anything is a book called The Big Leap. And this is really just about, I think, all of us in our work life really coming to terms and understanding our highest best use, the work that we do more efficiently than other people, and just what seat in an operation should we be in. So some of this is internal work, some of this is external work, but I think really figuring out both personally and organizationally where people can operate, with abundance, minimal friction, and burnout. Where we struggle, I mean, right? Like none of us have enough money. So it's like we could all build these huge organizations with departments and whatever, that would be really great. But it's just a reality. So how can, you create an organization that is optimized and resilient and responsive to your environment? So what to do right now is just explore the right structure. Nashville, you guys are doing that. You're like, we want to grow. What's the best way to do this? Really, it's an opportunity to look at models from around the country. I know you guys are talking to Kansas and Denver. I know that there's opportunities, like Leah, talking to New York and Hawaii and some of the other sort of municipal organizations to see how they're doing. I think this is really the most complex of the factors just because it does require funding, it does require board engagement, but this is something where I do think that the UGP can be especially helpful in terms of best practices or consulting or conversations. And good design just really frees leadership, but frees everybody to spend more time on what matters the most, which is delivering the greatest public good. Any questions? Okay, the next couple are fairly straightforward. We all need more money right now. And this is something, and I'm glad that we have Sarah, we have grant writers in the room, and I know everybody is really out there fundraising, all the time. But, we know that community gardens create enormous value. Community gardens deliver outsized return on investment. And if we all could be completely well-funded, just imagine all of the benefits that we would deliver. And also just having enough money moves every organization beyond survival mode, to build a sturdy, durable model. So what great funding looks like, and this is definitely a deeper conversation, but much more, this one's fairly straightforward, is diversified, reliable funding and more than just enough. So a couple just notes on that. The buckets of funding in nonprofits, and most of you know this, you've got your individual giving, you've got your foundations, corporate, government, and earned revenue. And every organization to the extent possible wants to build up each of those buckets as much as possible. So 2 years ago, many of us had federal grants. They were signed. We were certain we were good. And then we realized they were just kidding. And hundreds of thousands of dollars disappeared in the ecosystem. And without other reliable funding sources, And I'm sure there's a number, many organizations we know probably went under. But this is where we just saw in total real time how important it is to have diversified funding. The other thing is more than just enough. This was something that I really spoke very emphatically with my team about, is when you're going for a grant, or you're looking for funding in general, and you need, $50,000 to do a program, ask for 150. Not just for the heck of it, but how much do we need to hire the best people? How much do we need to, pay the wages that people need and the benefits that people need? How much do we need to create a robust, healthy, thriving network with some slack, actually? And so really starting to think big and not just enough to get through. So the thought exercise on this is, and I think this is something that's kind of fun and challenging for leaders, is, hey, if you were given all the money in the world, or somebody wrote you a check for $10 million, what would you do with it? Do that exercise. Like really think through, if I had all the funding I needed, what would this look like? And then start to adjust your language to see if you can, increase the grants and diversify the funding, and speak to folks that maybe, you hadn't talked or thought about talking to before. So, yeah, so money, of course. Land. Everything we do is based on land, whether we're just community gardens or farms or learning gardens. This one is the most, it's the most straightforward in a way. It's also very political. It's also very, very complicated. So the ultimate situation, and I know, every organization has different arrangements, but is legally protected sites. So many community gardens are on a handshake deal, and things can change, or they're on private land and the land gets sold, or the landowner changes their mind or puts restrictions on it. So where possible, I think this is just so really critical, is putting a legal document in place. In some cases, it's a license, a lease. There's lots of organizations who own their land, the cities do, but we also have land trusts out there. It's not as straightforward and without complications, but I think as much as possible, we can secure the land. And just, really being very vigilant about that, because if the land disappears, everything else. Water, also straightforward. Of course, we need water. CJ, you had mentioned water. I think in some cases we have too much. In some cases we have too little. In some cases it's climate situations. In others it's a financial or a municipal and operational issue. So again, this one's fairly straightforward, but I think putting a plan in place and working hard to ensure that your water is protected, that the price of your water is also protected and capped where possible, and that the load for water costs is spread equitably. Something that's really interesting in Denver is the gardens that are in the sort of more vulnerable communities tend to have water that is not paid for. And then we have a lot of gardens that are in more affluent communities where the water just happens to be free. And so, are there structures and systems where that expense can be distributed across the network? But yeah, this is an, of course, challenge. Okay, any questions or comments at this point? And if so, speak up. Okay. Okay, moving through, the next is continuity and sustainability. This is something that just, if we don't have continuity, the garden is starting and stopping, and it's just really, really challenging, to provide that optimal community benefit. And this is largely focused on garden leadership, site leadership. It applies to gardeners too, because as we know, every garden ebbs and flows. But garden leadership is really the through line and what keeps a garden thriving. So the mechanism. So this is something that the way that Denver Urban Gardens works is that there's 200 gardens and there's volunteer garden leaders in every single garden. Those garden leaders are supported by a person or a group of people at Doug who supports those leaders. And it's a model that works because HQ, the centralized organization, is not staffing each garden, is not, getting out into the field. We don't have to hire, a staff of 20 or 30 or 200. But having one person, support this allows the network to scale. But with that one person, when a garden leader moves or their life circumstances change or they aren't interested in gardening anymore, the central person is able to either find a replacement or step in to make sure that the community continues to be served no matter what leadership changes occur. So often leadership changes can mean that a garden goes away or that it just really ebbs and flows. So it's really this continuity in the community to be a reliable resource is really, really critical. So what to do now is just create redundancy in the system. So you have backup leaders, you have somebody at HQ who is, stepping in or filling the gap when necessary. Data, also very straightforward.
Linda, can I ask one question before we go to data?
Of course.
It just struck me. We talk about our network supporting gardens, but what we really are doing is supporting garden leaders. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that an important distinction to make?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I mean, for individual sites, of course, yes, for an organization, for a network, if you're going to scale, that is and I'm saying this, that is a model that seems to work better than an organization where you have 20 people who work for your organization who are actually in the field. That being said, Wasatch Community Gardens does it that way. And they've had great success where they are supporting the gardens, they are supporting some garden leaders, and they are supporting the gardens. But it does financially, you're limited in terms of how big you can be.
Yeah. All right, great. Thank you. Sorry.
Absolutely. And so actually, CJ, that raises a good point. When we talk about like the work of the UGP, it's something that I think is important to call out. So what the Urban Garden Project does is supports organizations. So you all are here representing organizations. The organizations support the leaders. The leaders support the gardeners. So it's sort of a, primary, secondary, and tertiary beneficiaries. And I guess if you keep going, then, the broader community too. Okay, data, quantifiable, improvable. We all have to collect data. It's a total pain in the butt. It's hard to zoom out and think about it, yet it's critical. And with the technology now, it is becoming easier. And this is just a reminder that, again, we all know in our heart, community gardens create tremendous value every day. But if you're not already drinking the Kool-Aid, sometimes you need numbers really to demonstrate the benefits. Also, when you're in a leadership role or when you're writing grants, you need to be able to measure the delta. You need to be able to measure the benefit that you're demonstrating objectively. There's definitely the subjective and the objective benefits and measurement here, but it is really, really important. And, like it or not, our funders require data as we go. And so it's just something, it's hard, it can be hard to do, but again, I think the technology that's out there right now is really enabling us to do this much more easily, and really, in some cases, overcome the fact that we all don't have data analysts, on our teams. But it's a useful, incredibly useful tool to tell the story. Okay, only two more. So awareness, and this is really just, guys, the more the community knows, the more the city, officials know and understand what you do, the more support you get. We know this work is transformational and uplifting and incredible. And so it's just making sure that we're getting the word out. This kind of goes back to the positioning, point at the beginning. Speak loud, enthusiastically, expansively about the work. But I do think it's so important for all of us to have conversations and help people understand the value. The story I like to tell on the awareness is, this goes back to a Doug story. When I got there, we had 180 gardens. They had signs with the Doug logo that was about, 4 inches by 4 inches. And I was like, my goodness, we have this amazing network, but nobody knows that this amazing network is here. So one of the first things we did was do these big, huge sort of 2x4 signs that went on every single garden. And within months, people were saying, oh my gosh, Doug is growing. You guys are everywhere. And it was like, no, we're not. We're just telling you. You're just seeing it. This is also where PR is really helpful. It's really actually quite easy to get PR. You reach out to your local radio station, your TV station, just posting socials, and just start to get this amazing work into the conversation of everyday people. And then the last one is just around policy. This is totally different in every city. We all have different land use policies, but the goal here is to protect what we're doing. And so this is something that, if you can get in front of, if there's policies that are holding you back in terms of land use, there's so many negative restrictive policies in place. I think it's just, here's an opportunity to really at a structural level make some changes. In Denver, we actually have pretty flexible policies, but I know in other cities it's absolutely not the case. And then in some cases, like you can't plant fruit trees, you can't do food on public lands, things like that. So can we, put policies in place that really make community agriculture easier to do? So those are the nine factors, and I'll just go back to this just so you can sort of see the overview. So these are the 9 factors. They're evolving. If you have thoughts after you've gone through this and you have feedback, you disagree, you have things to add, please do. This is a work in progress, and we really are inviting continued conversation on that. So accepting for the state of this conversation that those are the centralized functions, what does that mean at the garden level? Kind of as we were saying, even with this leader conversation, what should be happening at the garden level is growing food and building community, right? Gardeners and garden leaders don't want to be worrying about legal, don't want to be worrying about financials and insurance and, sort of securing water. We want to be able to free the people who are in the field to grow food and build community. What does this mean? What does it look like? At the garden level, they're assigning plots. They're setting up work days to build community and to keep the garden, healthy, to establish the culture in the work, in the garden. And so this is really, we want each site to be its own unique organism, personality, character, and by separating the operational, boring back office things from what's happening in the field, this becomes possible. So there are challenges with this model, for sure. Number one is overhead, right? If you're going to do this, you do actually need staff to do it. So the overhead can become bigger. Centralized organizations do tend to have larger budgets, but it does require funding to pay folks to do that. There will inevitably be a perception of HQ as the man, right? When you've got sort of this organization that people aren't seeing and interacting with every day, this can happen. It can also be overcome, and it isn't necessarily, inevitable. But it is this distance that can sort of create that. Misunderstandings of roles and responsibilities, also can inevitably happen, anything with distance and just overall expectations. So just quickly, I just want to share a couple, 4 organizations with these centralized models, and just highlight, the skill and the scope, and then also how they're different. So we've got Seattle Pea Patch, which is a municipal organization in Seattle, New York Green Thumb, Denver Urban Gardens, and then LA Community Garden Council. These are all centralized in various ways. And you'll see from that first the first line. These are large organizations, so 40 plus, all the way to 550 sites. They all do have larger budgets. So, the city ones are hard to sort of tease out from a big city budget. But these are over $1 million budgets. Land, sort of different configurations. If you're a city, if you're an independent nonprofit, it's assorted. Land, you tend to get gardens that you work with parks, school districts, housing authorities, etc. Water, the same thing. Continuity, they all have a centralized garden leader support function. They all have robust data collection. They are all, pretty high profile in the community. And then on the policies, again, I think all of them have pretty accessible land and favorable policies currently. So yeah, just to give you a sense of how this is showing up in the world. All right, and then I'm going to open it up for discussion, but there's just a couple of things before I take off the presentation. I just a quick overview of the Urban Garden Project. Join the Urban Garden Project. But also we have some upcoming workshops that I just wanted to share. On June 23rd, there's a workshop. Anna Mines of Honolulu is going to be talking about operationalizing equity, and also the first new garden that the city of Honolulu put in place and how that came about. On July 15th, we're going to have an Ask Me Anything with Kate Brown, who is the keynote at Grow Together, and the author of Tiny Gardens Everywhere. And then July 21st, we're going to have a workshop featuring extension and helping, just making sure that everyone knows the wonderful benefit that is offered from extension. Okay, hi. Now I'm going to try to come back to you all, but okay, hi. So that's what we got. So I'd love to know just, thoughts, feedback, and how this feels, lands, any of the topics or whatever you'd like to talk about.
Thank you. I thought that was really comprehensive. I love the 9 sort of factors involved. I think they're really well thought through. I think they really speak to our experience of the challenges and opportunities in thinking about centralizing those sort of functions around supporting garden leaders. I know personally, some of the things that highlighted for me is wanting to, get proper contacts at the right level with Doug and other organizations to really get into the weeds on how those coordinators work in filling gaps in leadership and recruiting new leaders, because that's like a real crucial piece of our modeling and visioning that we need to develop.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, and I can definitely connect you with the folks at Doug, and then the Kansas City folks too.
Can I ask a question, Linda?
Of course, please.
Yes, how do you choose the garden leader?
I mean, it's a mix. So, it's the dream scenario is that folks raise their hand, but it doesn't always happen. And typically we recommend that there's 3 to 5 garden leaders per site, and that just creates some overlap and redundancy. So ideally folks are going to raise their hand. In some cases they don't, and in some cases it's cultural. In some cases, it's more challenging. So there are sites that Doug will pay folks if we really need somebody to step in, and so ask for somebody to step in for, a stipended position. And in some cases, Doug will step in and be the garden leader for a season to get through. So right now it's really, and that's actually a good question. I know Doug is working to maybe a more sort of selective approach, making sure that folks have the skills and the talent and, the orientation to be a garden leader. But right now it's really, folks who raise their hand.
Thank you.
And thank you,
Not terribly
Linda.
scientific.
As a follow-up, this word, we're getting stuck on this word recruit, and I'm just wondering, does Doug and do other organizations recruit garden leaders, go out and find them, identify them, bring them in, or do you sit back passively and wait for leaders to bring their gardens to you or to emerge, right? I mean,
Right.
does that make sense?
Yeah. So, okay. So in the case, I think there's a couple things because in a new site, right? Because I know you guys are looking at growing. If there's a new site, folks from the community will come to Doug and they will say, we want a garden. And unless they have 3 to 5 people who are committed to being part of the garden for 3 years, we won't do it.
You say no. Yeah.
No, because it's not going to, the word I like to use is imposed. You can't impose a garden on a community. I mean, you can,
Yeah.
but it's going to take 5 years for it to take, and it might not ever work. So that needs to come from the community. So there need to be 3 to 5 people who have expressed interest in the garden for just to even engage with it. Then when you get to the point that the garden is in place and you're like, oh crap, we don't have any leaders, you hold town halls, you hold community meetings, you help people understand what is involved in the leadership role and that they're not doing it alone, right? That the food project is there to support them. We're going to give you tools. We're going to give you, all of these resources to do it. And so you will be supported. It's a heavy lift. I mean, guys, like garden leaders during season, I mean, it can be 20, 30 hours a week, depending on what they're doing. It is a heavy lift. So making sure that those expectations are clear, but also that, they're supported. And another thing, actually, I didn't mention this. This is sort of in the design side of things, is the way that Doug does it and other orgs do it differently is Doug handles all the plot applications online, so through Salesforce, and all the financials. So those garden leaders aren't handling money. They don't have to deal with tech. They just have to assign plots. So some of the stuff that can freak people out, as much as possible, taking that off their plate as well, I think is really helpful. But the recruitment piece, yes, in some cases you do actually have to go out and really kind of be in the
that's sort of like an established garden who sort of loses their leaders. You have to go out and actively recruit. But like for new sites that are coming into the network, if y'all don't have 3 to 5, it's a no. Like that's like question number 1. Do you have 3 to 5 people interested in leading? Yes. Go to next step.
Yeah. If they're coming to you, it could, if they're coming to you, I know in some cases too, you guys are looking to absorb existing gardens, I think.
Yeah.
So there it's also just, hey guys, who's willing to step up? You also might want to be like, hey, just do it for a season. Like this commitment can be, you can also cut down the responsibilities. Hey, there's a membership person, there's a compost person, there's a workday person, and really divide that. And that also can really lighten the load.
That was very helpful. Thank you. One follow-up. You mentioned earlier, and we can get all these documents from Doug to really get a sense of what's going on, but the leaders are planning the work days.
Yeah.
They're planning the work days.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not a staff job.
No, in some cases, well, it depends. In some cases, if they're like, they got funding, they're building a pergola, that Doug will come in because Doug has to, right? Or you guys have to, because that is a structure on a city property. It requires construction. Yeah. But if it's a weeding, you're weeding, it's the beginning of the season, or you're spreading compost, they organize that. And they also, because they know their community, and there's a lot of gardens who will have, I know Amanda, you had spoken to, like, you've got a structure and a system for what's going to work best for you, for what's going to appeal to the community the most. They're going to know. So we have work days on, Thursday evenings with a glass of wine and Monday mornings for this other group of people. So it really is up to the community, except for those big builds. Yeah, the Doug-led work days are new builds and construction projects. But we still, and in some cases, okay, wait. In some cases, there's corporate groups. There is a fundraising overlay, right? So we're talking about the sort of community side of it. But there is also an opportunity to bring in corporate groups, more structured, entirely centrally sort of run and organized, but it still needs to be coordinated with the garden. What do they need? What's the best time, et cetera.
Great.
on that.
Thank you.
So when the gardens coordinate their own work days, does Doug have, forgive me, Doug has like a volunteer platform that they can post or publicize their work days?
Mm-hmm.
And the garden leaders can just go in and like post like independently of Doug having to do it for them, basically.
Yeah. So Doug uses a platform called Get Connected, and actually UGP members get a discount on it, which is great. And it's really fantastic. And so every garden leader can post their own work days. And Doug can post the central, larger work days as well. And so anybody who wants to volunteer at Doug, they go to the button, they sign up on that platform, they get all the, and during the summer, they're going to get like 20 opportunities a week. And some of them are going to be at, a small garden out in Aurora that is planting pollinators. Other ones are going to be, filling seed packets at Doug's HQ. So it is all on that central platform. And there's data collection that goes with it too, which is really great. And it really lightens the load. And that's something that changed over the last 5 years is that distributed is putting the power and the resources for the work days in the hands of the garden leaders. So it didn't all have to be through Doug. All right, it looks like we are getting to time. I want to just ask, can you please do the poll if you're so inspired? And any final, and we can go a little bit over if you guys have time. Does anyone have any other questions?
I just wanted to comment on what Sarah put in the chat here, just kind of this reframing. It's so wild, Sarah, because I was thinking about this same thing as trying to like think about the valuation of the work that we do and that ROI kind of puzzle. And was thinking about like when I sit in city council meetings, no one is asking Public Works what the ROI is on repaving the roads. But if community agriculture is an essential piece of civic infrastructure, then why do we have to justify ROI? Or why don't repaved roads need to be justified? And I don't know the answer to that, but I've been holding that same idea. So when you put that in the chat, I was like, yes. Because yeah, they're up there and they're saying that they need, $4.5 million to repave a road. Again, sometimes because it just wasn't even done right the first time, last year. So, but that that would just be unheard of, unthinkable for anyone to do,
And Amanda and Sarah, this is why positioning is at the top.
Yeah.
This is where, and I know I've had conversations with a number of you, and it's like the whole mindset needs to shift at the most basic level. It's like, how do we turn community gardens from nice to haves to must haves? Yes. Then you get into those conversations. It's like, is it because they are so efficient, people don't take it seriously because they don't cost $1 million per 20 feet of asphalt? Is it because like what is it about this? And this is where like I think, we're probably going to get a working group together to just torture test this with city officials, with ULI, with folks who are working in this space. Like, guys, like where's the disconnect here? Because it is civic infrastructure. It delivers ROI like miles beyond so many of these things. Even and we love parks, but like even parks, it's like these are such activated spaces. So yeah, I love that. And we need to be challenging that. And we need to be like, dude, like, come on. This is so yeah.
If I can add something real quick, I gotta hop on another call here in a minute. But throughout this past year, CJ sent me, I don't remember if this was a snippet from a book, an article, I don't remember, but it had to do with the Freedom Gardens during World War II and the value behind that. And my memory is that like the history of the value of little garden plots have been lost. And so in building the narrative around how to paint or come back to painting community gardens as civic infrastructure, as like this incredibly useful and impactful resource, food resource, how to come back to that or like rewrite the history that's been lost. I
Did
don't
you
know.
read Kate's book, Tiny Gardens Everywhere?
No, but I wrote it in my document.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
yeah,
that's
I'll hand it to
exactly
you when
what
we're
that
done,
is.
Sarah.
Okay.
What was that?
We bought it. The Food Project bought a copy of the book, and
Okay.
I'm almost done with it, and we'll give
Oh,
it to
cool.
Sarah.
Okay.
But
But yeah, and in your notes around water, I also wrote down you had hopeful turn it or talk about it not in terms of a hopeful effort, but into a lasting resource. And I know that was about water, but still same thing. Like community gardens is not just a hopeful effort. It's not just a cutesy little thing that people in their retirement years tend to. It can be, right? But so much more.
yeah. All right. Well, guys, this was great. Thank you. And I'm going to just a couple next steps on this too. I'm going to be starting next week a Substack. And I'm going to be putting up the 9 factors and just ongoing conversations. Please, please like, subscribe, engage. It's already up. The Urban Garden Project Substack is up. But like the point of that is really this stuff, this is going to take, we're going to change, we're going to move mountains when we are all contributing our voices and helping to make this all stronger. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, otherwise, it was so great to spend the time with you and have a great rest of your week.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you,
Linda.
Linda.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Linda.
Thank you.
Bye.